You said that, that one of the things is that it's actually almost, and kind of give me your opinion on this, almost very difficult, like what you're believing of being conservative is almost seen as being offensive all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I never had a problem with being offensive to like when it came to everything. I mean, I was a punk kid in high school. Mind you, being punk and alternative, that kind of thing doesn't normally go with being conservative. So I was disliked by both sides at the time because I was an enigma to them, apparently.
Right.
But, you know, just even being in the middle isn't enough because you're siding with them. And I actually saw something online, had these little people, they were red and blue, makes up a political system. And, the blue side pushes another blue person down to the ground and a red person helps them up. And they're like, why are you siding with the enemy? But that literally sums it up. They get so in your face about everything. And even if you just slightly disagree or you think something should be, a little different, it's offensive. You're being racist. You're being sexist. I didn't know I could be sexist as a woman. I didn't know that was a thing until recently.
Right. First off, let me clarify something. The fact that you don't mind offending people is a genetic situation. It's a complete genetic thing. You can't help yourself. But, I find that interesting because I've seen that same meme, about pushing them down and then picking them up. It's like, oh, you're on second. I think that is one of the crazy things that would be tremendously different if me and Robert were your age. Okay. Was that you could literally get in the middle and ride right down. And you're right. I don't think you can do that anymore.
It's not enough.
No, you almost, I really hate to say this. Do you find that there's almost a dogma to it, almost like what would have been in the past would have been kind of like a religious dogma? Like, you have to believe this to be part of this group.
Yeah, honestly, because, I agree with some things on both sides, and I think most people do. I don't think I've ever met a person that literally believed everything of a conservative agenda or everything of a liberal agenda. But I mean, even at work, girls get into arguments about abortion and we're all women. And,
Right.
Half of us are kind of like, yeah, that's not my thing. And then other people are like, yeah, kill all the babies.
Yeah, that's the truth. You know what's weird about that, though? And I'm going to tell you something because we're going to pick on that topic for a second. That would have been one that would have been left off the table.
Right.
Working school. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I was in a couple of classes where they broached it, and it was like everybody handled that with kid gloves. Okay. And now I'm reading stuff, and it's like, wow, we're just there, and we're on it, and we're, I actually think race is there too, where I felt like people were very sensitive not to be too far to the left or the right, because I think we were all trying to pull together. And Robert, you can address that because that's one of your topics that you're disappointed with, is that we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And now I'm almost like, wow, nobody wants to go there. It's like they almost want us to be at each other's throat. And I know that for you, Robert, that's a big deal because you bring that, when we first started this, you brought that up, that you felt that some divisiveness was there on purpose.
It is, and we've talked about it in a couple of different shows, and you probably feel it on the university campus that they're dividing us over things that we're not divided on. That racism, though Joe and I, we grew up in Virginia in the 60s, okay, and 70s. So there were whites only drinking fountains when we grew up downtown Newport News. And, we've come a long way, and we've become enlightened in a good way, not in a bad way. And Joe, when he was on the police force, they're more diverse than they've ever been,
Yeah.
and all of the media, and it's all of the media have beat up the police now where they're not respected, and so we're approaching anarchy is what it seems like, if we're not there already. And I don't know how you feel about that on your college campuses, the two that you were on.
Yeah, I mean, ACAB, I'm sure you've heard that phrase a million times. All these girls and men have pins that just say, ACAB, no police. They have the same with the profanity 12, they don't want anything to do with them. And we have university police because we have a very large campus, and then we have a lot of, off-campus apartments and such. And, God forbid something happens to somebody, the cops show up and they don't want the cops there. Someone could literally be dying and they don't want anyone's help. Right. And it's gotten so bad that they're even against, the fire department and the EMS, like all the ambulances and everything. They're all associated with the same, first responder kind of thing. So they want nothing to do with them. And that's not everybody, but the loud minority at this point is that they don't want anything to do with it.
Well, that would have been nobody. Okay.
Right.
How small they are, right? One of the interesting things is when I was in Virginia the last time, I was teaching at the academy. And I'm just looking over 3 or 4 different classes that were regional. And I'm like, this is the most educated, most diverse, most well-rounded group of people we ever had doing law enforcement. Okay, it's everything everybody dreamed about back in the 80s, that we'd have just this, a much more representative kind of group of police officers. And it accomplished nothing because they still hate them. Yeah. You're just sitting there and you go, I'm looking. I mean, I was there when there was 2 types of people that did police work, especially in the area I was from for Virginia, and it was men, and we had white men and black men. Okay, that was it. That was pretty much a police department back then. You had a few females. There were still police departments that didn't have females. Okay, and we were just getting into trying to get people that had college educations. The average police officer was still a high school graduate, and we're working to, and everybody realized, we need to be better. I mean, this is 1980s. This is in 2020. Okay. Everybody understood we needed to get better and get more educated, get a bigger group of people, get a more diverse group of people. And we did it. And it's still not good enough. It's interesting. And what, I'm going to say, you said something, I want you to expound on it because I hadn't thought of it, though the moment you said it, it made all the sense in the world. The fact that it somehow became all the first responders, the fire department and the EMTs.
That's insane. That's insane.
Surprised me, but I guess and you can answer this, I guess the perception is that everybody's working, they don't have people's best interests at heart.
Yeah, I don't know how it got there because I never really heard anything bad about, ambulance drivers and, firefighters. But I think since they do often all work together, especially if there's a major accident or fire or something like that, they're all together and they all get along. That doesn't mean, the one racist cop that could be on the Albany police squad doesn't mean that, they all support him. They just all work together. They all get along. That's what you have to do as adults.
Yeah, the first responders are all, it was interesting because I hadn't thought of that before. But it made all the sense in the world. The second she said it, I said, because the problem with first responders we're like a family. Okay, the police and the fire got to fight. And then, we got something to say about the EMTs and they got something to say about us, right? But it's like a little family, going at it. But, the second she said it, I thought that. I said, yeah, I could see them. Not that I agree with them, going, oh, well, they're all just in this together, which is, not true. But I mean, you really do see how far this could go. Because I mean, look, you need the fire department and the EMTs too. Okay. Just pointing it out. What do you think with whether it doesn't matter which school you're on, and it is interesting. I want to back up on something and say, being on online classes on Zoom and stuff, that doesn't make any difference. As a matter of fact, I think that emboldens people because they become keyboard warriors. Mm-hmm. So you got that. But how do you think that the leaders of the school, the administrators, the people that, are making their money off being administrators there, when they don't address this, what do you think the end game's going to be?
Probably saving their income and covering their butts.
Yeah. I just,
if they get bad press from something happening, let's say they don't handle something right,
people
aren't going to want to go there.
Right.
It will ruin them. They'll ruin their reputation and everything.
Yeah, it's weird to have that, because I think one thing, and I'm not saying for all the people that love colleges, and I'm all right with college. Like, I'm not trying to put them down, but if they had ever been guilty of anything or accused of anything, it was underreporting. It's never been overreporting. Nowhere on this planet can you find an article. They say, the problem with these colleges, they're overreporting. Okay?
Right.
It's always been underreporting. And it would seem like this is kind of a slippery, kind of dangerous situation to get into if you're an administrator.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they've never, look, trust me, they've never been guilty of over-reporting.
Even a college professor, right? Because in your article, you said that there was a Black college professor in that Harlem class that was trying to steer it in the right direction, but it kept going off the rails into the BLM stuff. Is that true? Is that what happened?
Oh, yeah. He does everything he can. He's a wonderful professor, extremely well educated. He definitely knows what he's talking about. And what he's trying to explain to these kids is that, we're not having another Harlem Renaissance for the Black community. That's not what this is. This is something pushed out by the media. He just wants to teach what happened in the Harlem Renaissance. And I think that's something we should all learn about one way or another. It's definitely very interesting. I mean, all the writing and all the music, all this poetry, everything that's come out of there is incredible. But, that was 1920s. We're in 2020 now. This is 100 years later. They couldn't have imagined what would come of anything they've done. And now all their work is being used to push a completely different agenda that I can imagine a couple of them would not want anything to do with.
Yeah. I can even go back and think about, even on just in my time dealing in the 70s and the 80s, where I felt like it was very important that we were all trying to come together, and it was going that way in the 90s and all. And it's like watching that not be anymore is very difficult for me, because, you said something, and I want to emphasize it, because I do believe most people believe this. Most people really just want to be left alone. They want to live their lives. They're really not on any side, but you're making people pick sides. And Isabella, I think that that's one of the things that I think, you being young, but still being very, very smart about, is that, you're having to pick a side. You cannot be neutral.
You can't. It's just not possible. Like, I think I mentioned it in my article. When I was at work during the 2020 election, I was just kind of indifferent. Everybody was talking about it. And at this point, I just, want to be able to pay my bills, be able to afford gas. Like, I'm asking for very little here.
That's right.
And one girl was just like, "Oh, who are you voting for?" And I'm just like, back when my parents were younger, that you don't ask people that.
Ask that question. No,
I don't know why that's ever became okay again, because that's something you choose. That's your beliefs. You don't have to share them with anyone if you don't want to. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to go at this point.
Right.
And she's like, "Well, what side are you on?" Or she said something along those lines of like, "Oh, are you Republican, Democrat?" And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know where I fall at this point. And she's like, "Well, not in my mind, you're Republican." But she was joking at the time, but people genuinely think like that.
Yeah, they do. No, I agree. I don't think you can run that. And I feel bad for people, because sometimes when I'm, we talking now, or I read your article or some things we've said while we've been on Messenger, just talking, and I'm like, that's kind of a tragedy that you just can't say, I don't know. But I will tell you, your parents are right. There was a time you did not ask that question.
Yeah.
You just didn't ask that question. And now that's almost like people want to know what you believe. Like that's some sort of litmus test from whether or not you're a good person or not.